Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are finally going over my final Oscar nomination predictions. Now, because I already know this is going to be a really long video, let's just jump straight into this. How this is going to work is pretty much down below. You're just going to see what my the pictures when they pop up, the graphics I've pulled from the Awards Expert app. Over on the side, normally on each category, it's going to be what I'm considering, and then we're just going to pick the names from over there on the side. For Best Picture, because there's so many films, because you have 10 that are getting nominated. Currently, what you're seeing over here on the side, these are the 8 locks: The Brutalist, Emilia Perez, Anora, Conclave, A Complete Unknown, Wicked, Dune Part 2, and The Substance. So we're going to plug those 8 down below. Now you're going to see a new batch over here on the side, and these are what we're deciding between the final two slots. We've got All We Imagine Is Light, Challengers, Kneecap, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, Nosferatu, A Real Pain, September 5, Sing Sing. It's worth pointing out when we're looking at these what we're choosing between. Challengers has a Golden Globe nomination. September 5 has Golden Globe and PGA. Nickel Boys, AFI, Critics' Choice, Golden Globe. A Real Pain, AFI, Golden Globe, NBR, PGA. Sing Sing, AFI, Critics' Choice, NBR. There's a lot to kind of weigh here between those. I think ultimately what I'm looking at here, I think I think A Real Pain has kind of cemented back into my 9 slot. I think that we were maybe a little too quick to dismiss it once, because it was firmly in the Best Picture lineup at the beginning of the award season. It kind of fell out a little bit, and then I think we're back to. I think it's found its way back in there. It's getting a lot of big nominations, including that PGA nomination. So I have A Real Pain in there at 9, plus the Kieran Culkin of it all. I think is big for A Real Pain. And then if you saw my last video on my channel, kind of breaking down the PGA 10 and what it means for Best Picture at the Oscar, I pretty much kind of gave 4 films and said you just have to pick 2. I think A Real Pain is the only one of the 4 that I kind of feel okay about. I feel somewhat confident, so that's why Real Pain's going at 9. And then you just have 3 films left that you just have to choose between, and it's Nickel Boys, September 5, and Sing Sing. I will say this has been a pretty exciting week for me in movies. I finally got to watch Sing Sing a couple days ago. Finally found a theater. It was one single theater that was playing it near me. Not even near me. It was just in my state. I finally found one, so I was able to go see it. And then I actually, as of the night I'm recording this, earlier this morning or earlier today, I finally got to see Nickel Boys. And then either tomorrow or the next day, from when I upload this, I'll be going to see The Brutalist. So this has been a great week seeing a bunch of these films. Um, hmm, let's see here. So I guess that was a tangent just to say both Sing Sing and Nickel Boys are real fresh on my brain, on my mind. I really liked Nickel Boys. I think I liked it more than Sing Sing, and it has more going for it, I think. This is what's so tough. We're gonna get there's a couple categories a little bit later where it's tough because there's so many things that have so many great cases. Best Picture is like, unfortunately, a lot of these have more negatives than I think that they do have positives for why you should pick them. Ultimately, I'm gonna go with Sing Sing. I think that's what I'm going with for the number 10 slot. I think it's a complete toss up between Sing Sing and Nickel Boys, and I'm not completely ruling out September 5. I just don't have the guts to predict it, but I think that last spot really is going to come down to Sing Sing or Nickel Boys. Best case scenario, Oscar morning, they both get in. And then moving on to Best Director. So you're going to see over here on the left the different of the things I'm considering, and you'll see that there's one already in there. That is the biggest front runner, the biggest lock for me. That's Brady Corbet for The Brutalist. And I'm just going to give you the other, to start each of these, I'm just going to go over what I think the most locked in each category is. So I think Sean Baker is the next most locked for Anora, then Jacques Audiard for Emilia Perez, and then Edward Berger for Conclave. I think those are the 4 locks. The 5th spot I don't necessarily think is locked. There are a couple contenders here. Looking at the list on the side, obviously you're gonna have Denis Villeneuve, Coralie Farge, James Mangold, he did get that DGA nomination. I don't know if I'm putting any like stock into that or any faith into that. So I'm gonna pass on James Mangold. I think it really kind of comes down to I guess Ramel Ross is still kind of a name to keep an eye on. I don't think John M. Chu really has much anything to stand on. Pyle Kapadia did get the Golden Globe nomination earlier, but ultimately I think this is pretty easy. I want to get Coralie Farge in there, A, because The Substance is just my favorite of the Best Picture nominees this year, but B, because she's gotten, I mean, I guess not DGA, but she has just about everything else, right? She's got Globe, she's got Critics' Choice, she's got BAFTA. So I think Coralie Farge is the safest pick, and it's what I'm rooting for. I will say that director always makes me nervous. They're a branch that's willing to do anything crazy, and every year there's usually, for me, it's just, this is a me personal thing, whoever I'm rooting for the most to kind of get that last nomination usually ends up missing. To be fair, that was Greta Gerwig twice, so maybe as long as it's not Greta Gerwig, I don't have the worst luck in this. But I'm just a little nervous for the director category. I think they could do something crazy, but I don't know if they would do Denis Villeneuve. So that's why I think the safest pick here is just sticking with Coralie Farge. And then moving on to Best Actress, I have three locks in this category: Mikey Madison, Demi Moore, and Carla Sofia Gascon. Now you might notice that those three, they have all three of them have Globes, Critics' Choice, SAG, and BAFTA. There's another actress who has all four of those that you're noticing that I haven't put in as a lock yet. I'm still going to put Cynthia Erivo here in the four slot. I think she's going to get nominated, but I think there is a slight chance of something kind of crazy happening here. There's usually some big shakeup in the acting categories every year at the Oscars. Something crazy is bound to happen. It's not going to go, especially in a year as insane as this, it's not going to be straight chalk. And so the thing I'm kind of nervous about in this category is this fifth slot. I think there are like four. You see this list is massive over here on the side. There are so many contenders, but there are like three or four legit contenders, I think. And this is kind of the same with, like, the opposite of what I was saying with Best Picture, where it's hard to make a case for the last couple slots. This is the opposite, where I think so many different actresses have a great shot that I think there's a world where two of these actresses make this surprising push, and then maybe it ends up being Cynthia Erivo that's a little vulnerable. I do think that there is kind of a lot of discussion that's been going on about Cynthia Erivo being the Margot Robbie of this year, the big blockbuster that she gets everywhere and then she doesn't end up getting it. I don't necessarily think I'm calling her the Margot Robbie for that reason. I am kind of thinking she could be like Margot Robbie in the sense of, like, she doesn't get nominated, but Ariana Grande does. So, like, Margot Robbie didn't get nominated, but America Ferrera and Ryan Gosling did, and it's kind of one of those where you're going to have the discussion of, like, how do you nominate one thing, not the other? Like, how do we nominate the supporting role for this movie, but not the lead that's carrying so much of it? I don't think it's necessarily a one-to-one argument, but it's just I can see that happening. I'm not bold enough to predict it, but I just kind of want it on video just in case it does happen. I can come back and be like, I did see the beginning, the seeds being planted of that possibly happening. But again, I don't have the guts to actually predict that. So we are still putting Cynthia Erivo in the four. And so then it comes down to this fifth slot. And looking at this list, it's massive. Amy Adams and Night Bitch got the Golden Globe. Pamela Anderson, Last Showgirl, has Globe and SAG. Marianne Jean-Baptiste from Hard Truths has the Critics' Choice and BAFTA. Angelina Jolie and Maria had Globes and Critics' Choice. Nicole Kidman and Baby Girl, she just got Globe. Saoirse Ronan in The Outrun has BAFTA. Fernanda Torres, I'm Still Here, just has Golden Globe, which she won. Kate Winslet in Lee, Golden Globes, and Dea Challenger's Golden Globe. It's just every single person here, they've been nominated somewhere and they have something to them. So ultimately, what I'm going to do here for the fifth slot, there are, again, so many names. Marianne Jean Baptiste is maybe I guess I'm putting her in like eighth, or I guess seventh, and then in sixth, I'm actually gonna put Pamela Anderson. I think she's the one that I'm so tempted to still put in, and I think she's the one that if there's some big Pamela Anderson surge, she can be the one to knock out Cynthia Erivo possibly. Pamela Anderson, it's just I'm getting a very naiad kind of feeling with The Last Showgirl, where it's kind of not showing up anywhere, and then late at SAG and BAFTA, kind of the both the actress and supporting actress kind of get this late surge. I kind of think something could be happening there. But ultimately, for the fifth slot, I am going to go with Fernanda Torres from I'm Still Here. And ultimately, the reason I'm doing that is because I think, again, like I just said, this is one of those where there's so many arguments that could be made for so many different actresses. So ultimately, I kind of have to just go with whoever I think has the strongest push. And obviously, Fernanda Torres has the biggest vocal, outward show of support on the internet in many of people's YouTube comment sections. She has a whole country behind her that are pushing very hard, and I do think that maybe, obviously, that's not again a direct one-to-one correlation with the Academy, but I do think that there's a chance that the Academy, out of all of these actresses, maybe she is the one that again does have the most passion. And so with this fifth slot, there's so many people you can go with. I'm ultimately just going to default to the actress that I think has the most passion behind her. And then for Best Actor, there are, again, I think there's four locks in this category. Adrian Brody for The Brutalist, Timothy Chalamet, A Complete Unknown, Ray Fiennes in Conclave, Coleman Domingo in Sing Sing. And this last slot is really up between three people. And then if you're being nice, Jesse Eisenberg, I think he's kind of the other alternative there. But I mean, this really is coming down to Daniel Craig, Hugh Grant, or Sebastian Stan. Technically, I guess Sebastian Stan in two different movies, but I think if Sebastian Stan's going to get in it, it's for The Apprentice. I'd have such a hard time seeing a different man leapfrogging his nomination chances as opposed to what he's doing in The Apprentice. This is ultimately, I'm going to say that I think Sebastian Stan maybe feels too little too late. He did, got the BAFTA nomination. He did get the Golden Globe win, I get, at um, for a different man, at the Golden Globes. So he's been a name that has been out there, but I don't think there's quite enough momentum here for him late. So I think really I'm kind of just down between Daniel Craig and then Hugh Grant. They both have three precursors. Craig has Golden Globe, Critics' Choice, and SAG. Somehow missed BAFTA, which I think is what's making us so uneasy about just predicting him. Hugh Grant has Golden Globe, Critics' Choice, and BAFTA, so he missed SAG. So I think it's just I don't know. I think ultimately what it is. I think Hugh Grant would be the bigger shock. I think it's a horror movie that isn't necessarily, not that Queer is necessarily some prestigious like Oscar film. I mean, this is the Queer's one and only shot at a nomination, right? So it's like, not that I think defaulting to Craig because he's in the more Oscar-y film. Like I don't think that's what it is. And it's hard to say you're defaulting to Craig because he's the more well-respected actor when it's Hugh Grant. So it's really tough between the two. I think ultimately I am going to stick with Daniel Craig. That's what I've had. At the beginning of the year, I kind of didn't think he was going to get in at SAG. I kind of went away from him. Then, obviously he gets in. I put him back in for my BAFTA prediction. He missed. And so I think I don't want to keep doing this kind of back and forth with Craig. I had enough faith in Craig early in the season to kind of lock him in there. So I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to keep Daniel Craig in there. But I am looking out for Hugh Grant as well as Sebastian Stan. Moving on to Best Supporting Actress, and I think this might be one of the most insane category because I only have two locks in this category. It's Zoe Saldana and it's Ariana Grande. Those are the two locks. Now, this is kind of the same. It's crazy how it feels like this happens every year. The actress races are always so much more interesting and compelling than the actor races. Because so for supporting actress, you see this list, you see it super long. Everyone here has a lot of things going for them. Monica Barbaro, Complete Unknown, she got in at SAG. Jamie Lee Curtis for The Last Showgirl, she's gotten in at SAG and BAFTA, kind of the last two big precursors. Danielle Deadwyler from The Piano Lesson has Critics' Choice and SAG. Ingenue Ellis Taylor in Nickel Boys has Critics' Choice. Selena Gomez in Amelia Perez, she's got Golden Globe and BAFTA. Felicity Jones in The Brutalist, she's got Golden Globe and BAFTA as well. Margaret Qualley in The Substance has got the Globe and Critics' Choice, and then Isabella Rossellini has Globe, Critics' Choice, and BAFTA. So I think here you've got so many different actresses. They've all got so many different things going for them. I think what you have to do is in the way I'm looking at this, I think there is a chance this could be a category that's almost like the way it was at SAG, where it's like you only had the top two, and then it was just like it felt like they were just pulling names out of a hat. I think that's what this could be, and so I think ultimately what you have to do is just kind of, at least what I'm doing, is just going with like what I feel like are the safest. And I'm fully expecting to not get 5 out of 5 in this category, but I'm hoping that by kind of going with the safest options, I'm at least getting 4 out of 5. Maybe only even 3, but I'm the hope is that I get at least 4. So I think the most safe out of everyone here, I'm gonna go with Isabella Rossellini, again with the Globe, Critics' Choice, and BAFTA. And then, crazy enough, I think the next most safe, I'm going with Jamie Lee Curtis in The Last Showgirl. This is one of those that I said in my BAFTA reaction video, because I predicted her at BAFTA, and I predicted her solely because based off of the nomination at SAG, I looked at the BAFTA nominations and I said, she has SAG. If she gets BAFTA, she's getting Oscar. I just kind of had this vision. It just felt right. And then once she got that actually got that nomination at BAFTA, it was almost like a confirmation, and I just said, okay, yep, I felt this coming. So there was nothing that was going to prevent me from not picking her, at the Oscar. And so then it just comes down to this last slot. And of all of these names, the names I'm seriously considering, we've got, um, I think it might be Selena Gomez, Felicity Jones, and Margaret Qualley. I think those are the three that I'm most considering. I think Monica Barbaro could have been an interesting case if she would have just gotten in a couple more places, because A Complete Unknown was such a late surge that it's like I think maybe there is still some shot of her being like this big surprise Oscar nomination morning, but it will be exactly that, a massive surprise, because I'm not predicting it. So between Gomez, Jones, Qualley, I think the way I'm looking at it is because I mean, again, like I talked about, there's so many open slots here in this category. Qualley still could get in, but I just kind of viewed Jamie Lee Curtis just taking over the Margaret Qualley spot, because Margaret Qualley got the Globe and then Critics' Choice, and then fell off right as soon as Jamie Lee entered it and got SAG and BAFTA. So it's again not a great correlation to just say like she took her spot and now there's no spot for Qualley, because obviously there is, but that's just the way I'm rationalizing it in my head. So I kind of come down to Selena Gomez and Felicity Jones, and again I think the safer thing to do here is to stick with Felicity Jones. For The Brutalist, she's got the Globe and the BAFTA. Again, which is the exact same nominations that Selena Gomez has, so it's really like hard to say like, oh, this combo is so good for Felicity Jones when it's the exact same combo for Selena Gomez. I think ultimately it's just kind of a gut prediction, but again, I totally am only expecting to get maybe 3 out of 5 is like worst case scenario in this category. I'm hopeful for 4. I don't see how in a world where I go for 5 for 5 in this category, and that most likely means Selena Gomez or Margaret Qualley. Those would be the shockers or the big surprises in the category. And then Best Supporting Actor, this one I have 4 locks, and my 4 locks are Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain, Yura Borisov in Anora, Edward Norton in A Complete Unknown, and Guy Pearce in The Brutalist. Now, Culkin, Borisov, and Norton, they've gotten everything: Globe, Critics' Choice, SAG, BAFTA. Guy Pearce, I still think he's a lock. He only has Globe, Critics' Choice, and BAFTA. He missed at SAG, which was crazy, but I think it's more so kind of a fluky thing. I think the whole Jonathan Bailey nomination at SAG kind of threw the whole category off. Obviously, there was a couple other spots that he, could have gotten in, because Jeremy Strong got in at SAG as well. So I think there's a couple spots you look at it and you say, okay, I think there's a world where if things were a little more normal at SAG, then obviously Guy Pearce would have got one of those slots. So I'm not holding that SAG miss too much against Guy Pearce. So then it comes down to this 5th slot. Obviously you see the options here. We've got Clarence Macklin in Sing Sing, Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice, Denzel Washington in Gladiator 2. Those are the only 3 that I'm really considering. Clarence Macklin has got Critics' Choice and BAFTA. Jeremy Strong has SAG and BAFTA, and Denzel has Golden Globe and Critics' Choice. So all three of them have two precursors. So you can play that game where you look at it and say which precursor combo is more important. And honestly, I guess the answer, just because of what I was saying for Jamie Lee Curtis, would be Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice with that exact same SAG BAFTA combo. And full transparency, I mean, first off, I crossed Denzel off pretty early in this whole debate because Denzel, he's the one that he got the Globe and the Critics' Choice, so he got the first two and then has just kind of fallen off. And it has just been not only Denzel, but the Gladiator 2 in general has just kind of been missing a lot of spots. So I wasn't really strongly considering it. So full transparency, I had Jeremy Strong in The Apprentice in here, and I had him in a cup maybe before BAFTA because I just kind of felt this coming. Kind of the same thing, this exact same thing as Jamie Lee Curtis, getting that same combo, getting in. It just felt like it was an inevitable thing, and so I took out Clarence Macklin pretty early in this race. Again, having not seen Sing Sing, so I put in Jeremy Strong. I have now, like I just said at the beginning of or earlier in this video, a couple days ago, I was able to go see Sing Sing, and I I liked the movie. I appreciated a lot of things in the movie. Obviously, it's Coleman Domingo is the big standout, but Clarence Macklin was so good in the movie, and ultimately the way I kind of I'm justifying this. So if you can't tell, I'm picking Clarence Macklin. I'm kind of going back. I think most people have switched to Jeremy Strong. I'm going back to Clarence Macklin, and part of the reason I did it, and I this is not the best way to make your predictions because once you get one thing wrong, it's a domino effect that starts messing you up everywhere. But because I put Sing Sing in picture, I want to make sure it gets a couple nominations below to just justify that. So it's not this big shock of Sing Sing didn't get anything and then all of a sudden it's randomly in picture at the end with one or two nominations. I wanted to make sure that Sing Sing was getting into a couple spots. And so I think it has at least one guaranteed nomination, and then I think it's up for three others where it's kind of right. It's in that five or six spot for each of those categories. So full transparency, this is kind of one of those things that because I'm putting it in picture, I want to make sure it gets into a couple other spots, and I just think that this is me kind of hope dicting on this, that there's just the shot that Clarence Macklin, the actor's branch, gets him in there. I would love it. Jeremy Strong is great in The Apprentice, but Clarence Macklin is one of my favorite performances of the year. So it's crazy to say. I want to say I'm going with my gut, but my gut told me to get Clarence Macklin out of the category a while ago. So it's almost like I'm betraying my gut at the last second here because I've now actually seen him acting, and I'm just hoping that enough people in the Academy have seen Sing Sing and have seen his performance and are willing to give him the nomination. And then we have Best Original Screenplay. This is another one with four locks: Honora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, and The Substance. And this fifth slot, you've got the options. You see, we've got All We Imagine Is Light, Challengers, which has Critics' Choice and the WGA nomination, Hard Truths, The Seed of the Sacred Fig, and September 5. Now, the Critics' Choice is tempting for Challengers. September 5 also has Critics' Choice. The Challengers is the only one here that I'm considering that has the WGA or has an additional nomination, which is that WGA nomination. I'm not super familiar with the Writers Guild. I don't follow it super closely every year. I kind of am generally aware of what kind of gets nominated there. But the thing that I know is every single year there are so many films that are ineligible at the WGA, and I'm not 100% sure why. Often I'd have to it would be really easy to look up and see, but I didn't do it before recording this video. But I know there's always so many ineligible films at WGA that I never strongly consider them that strongly. But with that being said, this really is down between Challengers and September 5 for me. And I'm going to give the edge to September 5. I think solely because it's kind of the same thing. It's the same thought of if I think there's a chance it gets in for picture, it's got to get another nomination here or there. And maybe this is a bit of a spoiler. I'd have to think. Nah, I think maybe do I might have September 5 in one other spot, but for the most part, I don't have September 5 in a lot of places, and it's not even really in contention in a lot of categories. So I feel like it has to at least get something. So I'm gonna give it the screenplay here because if there is that chance for it to get picture, it has to be somewhere else, right? And Challengers, I think, while it is a good film and a lot of people really love it, I think it has a better shot in a lot of these below the line categories, some of these tech categories. Ultimately, I don't think it's gonna get any above the line mentions here. And then moving on to Best Adapted Screenplay, another category where I think there's four locks. So I've got Conclave, Emilia Perez, Nickel Boys, and A Complete Unknown. And this last spot here, oh, this is tough. So the contenders we have are Dune Part Two, which has Critics' Choice in WGA. I'm Still Here, Sing Sing, which has Critics' Choice in BAFTA, and then Wicked, which has Critics' Choice in WGA. Um, I'm Still Here. I think they're typically the reason I have this, and same reason I have All We Imagine Is Light as kind of a contender, as I guess as well as The Seat of the Sacred Fig and original screenplay, as I feel like usually there's an international film or two that have really good shot at getting into adapted screenplay. It's typically whatever's winning best international feature has like a great shot of getting in, which obviously is Amelia Perez, which is in here. So it's like I don't necessarily have to try and squeeze in another international film, but I like considering them. And so ultimately, I think this comes down to Dune Part 2 and Sing Sing. And again, this is kind of the same thing like I was just saying with Clarence Macklin. Because I'm putting it in picture, I feel pretty comfortable about it getting a screenplay nomination as well. So I am putting Sing Sing in here. It's also the same thing with Dune Part 2. I think you're going to see. So far, you've noticed I haven't. I have to think of. I haven't nominated it anywhere so far other than picture. Dune Part 2 is one of those that I don't think it's going to get a lot of above the line nominations, but you're going to see as we start dipping into the craft categories, this is where Dune Part 2 is going to start racking up a bunch of nominations. All right, and then moving on to Best International Feature. This is a category where admittedly, I've only seen Emilia Perez, so that is why, and obviously, it's getting Best Picture nomination. It's the front runner in this category. It's going to be a lock. I do think that even though I haven't seen any of those other films, there's three films I'm pretty confident in addition to Emilia Perez being locks, and that's I'm Still Here, which is Brazil's submission, The Seat of the Sacred Fig from Germany, Kneecap from Ireland, and then obviously Emilia Perez from France. So those are the four locks I have in this category. I will say that international feature every year does something crazy. In part, I think sometimes due to the fact that the way it works in international feature is each country submits one film, and then that is the film that you can get not that can represent your country. So All We Imagine Is Light wasn't submitted, and so even though it's been getting in it every other precursor, it isn't even eligible here. So it's like it opens up this wide open fifth slot. I also think that in addition to that, international always gets crazy at the Oscars, where you'll have things like Luana, A Yak in the Classroom, which no one was predicting was so far down in like Gold Derby odds, and no one's predicting it. EO getting in a couple years ago over Decision to Leave. Like, this is a category where there is usually one of those films that we consider a frontrunner or we consider something that's locked in the category winds up missing for something random. So this fifth slot, I think a lot of people are going with either like The Girl with the Needle, which got nominated at Golden Globe, or Vermiglia, which was also nominated at Golden Globe. I don't. Flow was nominated at Critics' Choice, and it is the submission here. I don't think it's going to happen for international feature, and so for me, I'm wanting to make something that's like the crazy thing, the why way out there fifth pick, and I was looking at it and I was going to grab something crazy, and then ultimately I saw what I'm picking here, which is How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies, and I looked at it and I was like, that's not even that crazy of a pick because I've heard such great reviews and I've heard so many positive things about this film, which is the submission from Thailand. So like it's one of those that like I feel like it's not a lot of people are picking it, so it's kind of a different pick for me. It's something I can kind of go out on a limb and say like this is something I think's happening. But also I've heard so many great things that I'm willing to take that risk on it. I don't know if this is necessarily the type of film, because again, I haven't seen it, and so I don't know if it's necessarily the what the Academy does in international feature, if that is the film that they kind of nominate. But for me, it's just one of those that I'm not confident in the category because I haven't seen a lot of the things, so I'm willing to take a risk here on a film that I know is well liked from the people that have seen it. And then we've got Best Animated Feature. This is the easiest category. I have four locks because I feel weird just locking all five. But Flow, The Wild Robot, Inside Out 2, and Memoir of a Snail are my four locks. The fifth slot is essentially locked. It's Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul. Again, it's as about as locked as it can get. I feel weird saying all five are locked because then you're just like eliminating any potential chance of something crazy happening. But I mean, the only other contender you see here on the side is Moana 2, and all that has is Golden Globe. So it's not happening. You might as well say all five of those are locked. Moving on to best editing, I've got three locks in this category: Dune Part Two, Anora, and Conclave. Now, in this category, we see the others that we're considering here: The Brutalist, Challengers, A Complete Unknown, Amelia Perez, The Substance, September 5. Typically, I mean, this is one of those where I think it's easy to look at if you're looking at a film and saying like what has the actual best editing. Challengers, in terms of just kind of like the flashy editing, and it's a sports movie and it's got this and that. I think that is a spot where Challengers could get this editing nomination, but I'm pretty boring when it comes to predicting editing because there is such an important critical piece of best picture winners having an editing nomination, and so I am usually very boring in this category. Dune Part 2 is the only one here that's like not necessary. I mean, it's in best picture, but it's not necessarily like competing for best picture, but I still have it in. And then I kind of just go with the four other films that I think are, competing for best picture, because it's an important stat for a best picture winner to have the editing nomination. So Anora and Conclave, I think, are, like I said, they're locked. But then I'm going to give Amelia Perez and The Brutalist the final two spots here. I do think that The Brutalist is one where a lot of people aren't picking it. I don't think it's a trendy pick right now. Ultimately, I put it in, and it's, again, solely for what I was just saying, because if I think The Brutalist has a chance of winning Best Picture, I think it should get an editing nomination. The Brutalist is an interesting case, though, because, and it's a debate that I think comes around every single year in terms of whatever the longest film of the year is, and in this case, it's absolutely The Brutalist. It's an interesting debate when you're saying, should the longest film of the year get an editing nomination, because clearly they didn't edit it very well, and left us with a 3.5 hour runtime. But then there's also the other kind of hand of that argument, the other side of the coin, which is they do deserve a best editing nomination because they had to edit, how probably 5+ hours of footage to get it to a 3.5 hour movie. Like, they had so much more footage and so much more film that they had to edit and do things, kind of line things up with. And so it is kind of an interesting debate there, usually, between, does the longest film of the year deserve an editing nomination? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, just because, again, I'm pretty boring when it comes to predicting the editing category. I just like to give any film that has a realistic shot of getting Best Picture, giving it its editing nomination. And then we've got Best Cinematography, another category that I have four locks: The Brutalist, Dune Part 2, Nosferatu, and Conclave. You're going to notice, first off, I want to talk about this is like I said a little earlier, Dune Part 2 is going to start getting a bunch of tech categories. You're going to notice there's another film in this category, Nosferatu, that this is the beginning of them really about to start getting a whole bunch of nominations as well. So I think those four are locked, and then it looks, we're looking between Challengers, A Complete Unknown, Amelia Perez, Maria, and Nickel Boys for that last slot in cinematography. Now, I do want to start by saying this again, like I just said, that as of when I'm recording this video earlier today, I got to see Nickel Boys finally, and it breaks my heart to say that I'm not really considering. I don't think Nickel Boys has much of a shot here in this category, which is insane because the cinematography might have been my favorite part of Nickel Boys. Like, it was so beautifully shot. Not gimmick's not the word I'm looking for, but the style that they used in terms of shooting it from like the characters' POVs was I mean, it was interesting, and it was something that like is commendable, and it's something that's like that alone can get you the cinematography mention. But also, just, I mean, it was just so many beautiful shots. The aspect ratio obviously kind of being like the square ratio created again just some cool shots, and but then it was like things of not just shooting it from the POV of the characters, but like anytime they were looking at a window, you could see their reflection in the window. The one shot early in the movie where he's kind of like leaning, he's on the bus and he's looking at people outside the bus, and all of a sudden the light kind of hits the window, right, where all of a sudden he just kind of takes up the whole screen. Like there were so many just really cool shots and things that they were able to do in Nickel Boys that like it was so well done that I'm like I almost am like tempted to just like Hail Mary throw it in there because I think it deserves to be in there. But the reason I'm not is because there is a film here that is getting a late surge, and it's Maria. Edward Lockman is the cinematographer of this film, and this is one of those that the reason it's getting this late surge and it's getting this mention is because of the ASC nominations. Now ASC they nominated 7 films this year, and so you kind of have to just pick 5 of the 7, and so that's where we went with A Complete Unknown, and I believe it was Wicked was the other one that got the other ASC nominations. I think those are the two that, at least Wicked, I'm pretty comfortable kind of dismissing. A Complete Unknown, maybe you kind of got to consider it a little bit, but the thing with Maria is because it's Edward Lockman, because it's a Pablo Larraín film, a year after a previous Pablo Larraín film shot by Edward Lockman was the late surprise coming out of nowhere, getting the the ASC nomination, then went on to get an Oscar. It's the same play a year later, where El Conde was the film last year that was able to get that kind of late push and get that nomination. So as soon as I saw Maria get that nomination at ASC, I thought I was going to be smart. I thought I was going to be the smart one and be like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put it in there. It's in my predictions. And then I saw how quickly that so many other people just kind of followed suit and all had that same realization and that same thought. So I don't think it's as big of a Hail Mary as I initially was kind of hoping it would be. I thought it would be this cool, trendy, or not really trendy pick that I was kind of going against the grain, but it does ultimately seem like a lot of people are kind of predicting Maria. I could. It's not guaranteed by any means, right? But I feel comfortable about its chances. Moving on to best production design, I again another category. I'm noticing I'm doing this a lot, where I'm locking 4 films, then kind of leaving the last spot up for grabs. My 4 locks are Wicked, Dune Part Two, The Brutalist, and Conclave. Now, the fifth slot, there's really kind of only 3 films that we're kind of debating between here, and it's Gladiator 2, Nosferatu, and The Substance. Again, I love The Substance. It's my favorite film in the Best Picture, or I mean, just in Oscar contention, because my favorite film of the year isn't in contention anywhere. So I would love for The Substance to get as many nominations as it can, and I think this is one of the unfortunately, it's one of the few craft categories it does have a shot in. It should be in a whole lot of other places, but it's just not happening. So I don't think it's going to happen here. So then I'm kind of down between Nosferatu and Gladiator 2, and this is kind of an example of Gladiator 2, I think, was a tech player that's kind of trending down. Nosferatu is a tech player that's trending up. So in my head, it's pretty easy to just make that switch. So I'm going with Nosferatu in the fifth slot. It does have a Critics' Choice and BAFTA nominations, which is essentially this is the production design, because Critics' Choice has 6 slots, so they gave these 5 films plus Gladiator 2, so it's like all 6 of the films I'm debating between were all at Critics' Choice. But this 5 I have here is the BAFTA 5, and I think ultimately it just comes down to the trends and what I'm feeling. It feels like Gladiator 2 is trending down, Nosferatu's trending up, so naturally I'm gonna let them kind of go past each other and put Nosferatu in. Best costume design, this one I only have 3 locks. It is Wicked, Dune Part 2, and Conclave are my 3 locks. Oh, and this is one where I've kind of gone back and forth on multiple of these. So the ones we're considering, we've got Beetlejuice, A Complete Unknown, Gladiator 2, Maria, and Nosferatu. So ultimately, let's do it. Let's put Nosferatu in at the 4. I think it's the same thing. Like I just talked about Nosferatu, it's going to start sweeping a whole bunch of these categories in the text and the craft categories. Nosferatu has both Critics' Choice and BAFTA, so it does have support in the costume design category. So we're going with that. And then it comes down to This is crazy. I like in the moment I am so close to making a switch mid video. I already have the graphic made, so I might as well tell you what I've got in the graphic. It's Maria is what I put in there. Critics Choice nomination there for Maria. The more I'm just staring at a complete unknown right here with that BAFTA nomination. Again, not giving a whole lot of consideration to Gladiator 2 has the Critics' Choice, but again, it's just Gladiator 2 is missing in so many spots. Now, I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying, oh, Gladiator 2 is missing everywhere. I will give you a spoiler. It is in a couple categories below. Like it does get some nominations eventually, but it's just these are some of the categories where I think it's kind of falling short and not getting anything. But yeah, it's as I'm looking at a complete unknown that just feels so tempting for costumes. Um, Ultimately, I think Maria, maybe the costumes are more impressive, but the thing with Maria is it feels weird to say like Jolie just didn't happen. Like when she was such a locked thing that we were all predicting early on before like precursor season really started, and then to just move on from her and be like, okay, never mind, it's not happening. But then now all of a sudden saying, but we think it's actually going to get a couple crafts categories. Like that feels a little weird to be predicting it in two different categories now. Um, I'm again, like I said, I already had the graphic made, so we're gonna stick with Maria. But that is one where there is a chance I might flip to a complete unknown, like the night before Oscar nominations. So I'll post maybe a follow up comment on this video if I do make any additional changes afterwards. But there's something about that just now I'm staring at it. It is really tempting. Then we've got best makeup and hairstyling. This is a category I only have two locks. It's The Substance, which is going to win this category, and Wicked, I think, is a lock. So now we've got a whole. This is where we're also getting into the shortlisted categories. So you're going to see pretty much everything on the left side here. These are all of the films that are, in that you can choose between. You have to pick from this specific group, this list. So there's The Apprentice, Beetlejuice, A Different Man, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, Maria, Nosferatu, and Waltzing with Brando. This is one of those categories where I think if Sebastian Stan had been getting into actors lineups in different precursors, I think The Apprentice would have been a slam dunk, obvious nomination, but that just wasn't happening, so we're going to leave it be. I think the film here that I'm most confident in is the other Sebastian Stan film, A Different Man. We're going to put that in the third spot. I think I am pretty confident in that being something that's happening here. And then we're going to do what I've been doing. The theme, Nosferatu, has been coming in and it's just been picking up these craft categories just with its super strong. It's crazy that Nosferatu, it really only had two places it showed up: Critics' Choice, and when it happened there, I think a lot of us were kind of dismissing it as being like the Critics' Choice. They kind of have that one movie every year that's not really getting it anywhere else, but they want to show that they loved it, and they nominated it in like two categories, maybe three, and then BAFTA came a couple weeks later and said, yeah, we love it, we're putting it in five categories. And so I think that that's just kind of the trend that Nosferatu's on, where I think it's going to get around that five-ish range at the Oscars. So Nosferatu is locked in. And this fifth slot, looking at Amelia Perez has a BAFTA nomination. Dune Part 2 has Critics' Choice and BAFTA. This is another one that I guess I need to put it on the board and just show you what I'm looking at here. I predicted Beetlejuice. I put in the fifth slot. But as I'm looking at that Dune Part 2, that looks tempting. I think part of the reason I made this, and again, this is a hard thing to do when you're making predictions and you're letting one prediction kind of become a snowball effect for other categories. I think part of it is if I put Dune Part 2 in here, I'm afraid of over nominating Dune Part 2, because I don't think it's going to get. I think it's going to get snubbed in a couple categories. I don't think it's going to get that many nominations, and I'm probably already predicting it for too many. The problem with doing this game is you try and say like, okay, maybe I predicted Dune Part 2 for 8 Oscars. It's not getting that. Let's cut it down to 5. And so you kind of find a couple categories here and there. You're like, okay, here's where I think it's going to miss. What'll end up happening is it'll get those categories and then it'll miss other categories. So you're kind of like losing double points for trying to like exactly pinpoint where you think the misses are happening. But this is one of the categories I think as of right now I feel comfortable enough predicting Dune Part 2 to miss. But again, if I make a late switch and put it back in over Beetlejuice, then I'll let you know in the comments below before Oscar nominations. Best visual effects, I've got three locks here: Dune Part Two, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Better Man. I think those are your locked categories, and then you look at the remaining from the short list we have to choose from: Alien Romulus, Civil War, Deadpool and Wolverine, Gladiator 2, Mufasa the Lion King, Twisters and Wicked. First off, this is where finally I do think Gladiator 2, because it's a short list category, and I do think that it's gonna get something, especially in the short lists where it's like not the strongest competition that it has to go up against. So I think we're gonna put Gladiator 2. I think this is one of the spots that does make it. And then this fifth slot is one of those that is just so up there between. I think a lot of people are kind of picking between Alien Romulus and Twisters. I think is maybe the kind of the consensus what we're going for. I think Deadpool and Wolverine. I just don't. I don't feel like usually Marvel gets one in here every year, right? But I just Marvel has been it's had a much needed kind of like reset year, it feels like, and so I don't think that there's much of a need to nominate, Deadpool and Wolverine here. So I think they're going to ignore it. Same thing with Mufasa. I don't think it's, even though, it's there's so much kind of outcry and people that just don't love it and love specifically the visual effects side of these live action Lion King movies, and so I don't feel comfortable predicting that. I think a lot of people are tempted to go with Wicked just because it is the best picture contender here. And I am going with Wicked as of right now. It's got Critics' Choice and BAFTA, so it's got a couple, mentions here in VFX categories. Again, this is also one of those. I should have mentioned this way earlier in the video. I only kind of follow a couple of the precursors. There's so many different precursors that I just either am not even aware of or I just don't follow closely enough to know. So obviously for that more in-depth analysis, obviously you'll go to the Oscar Expert or you'll go to these other channels on YouTube. I don't necessarily have the widest range of like all of the different kind of visual effects bodies that make these nominations, but I believe I've heard that Wicked has missed a couple like of those important precursors. Ultimately, I'm gonna go with Wicked, not just because it's the Best Picture nominee. I guess maybe it's kind of partially because it is the Best Picture nominee, and I think maybe that gives it the edge. But it's also one of those that I think it's Wicked is one of those that I envision it's going to get a pretty big nomination total, and so it's one of those that anytime I have a fifth slot that's kind of open and there is a Best Picture nominee, it just kind of makes sense to give it to just kind of bolster that nomination total, which again is it's not the right way to be thinking about making your predictions, but sometimes that is just where my brain goes. To be fair, I do think that there is good visual effects work in Wicked as is, and so as much as I would love Alien Romulus or Twisters, I think those were both great VFX showcases from this year. I think I'm going to just lean Wicked and then maybe hope for one of those two. I think would be kind of the best case scenario. Next up is Best Sound, and this is another one of four locked category: Dune Part 2, Wicked, A Complete Unknown, and Emilia Perez. I guess a Complete Unknown and Emilia Perez shouldn't necessarily be locks, but I do think it's kind of one of those that those films have just been sweeping and like have such crazy momentum right now that I think any spot I can nominate them, I'm going to, just to give them, because I feel like that's what the Academy might do, is they might just over nominate it and get those in everywhere. So this is a spot in a long listed category where there maybe isn't the greatest of options. I think people might default and put those two in. So then this fifth slot, we're between Alien Romulus, Blitz, Deadpool and Wolverine, Gladiator 2, Joker Folie à Deux, and The Wild Robot. Well, first, it's absolutely not Joker Folie à Deux. That is the most not happening. This is another spot where, again, I think Alien Romulus could maybe sneak and get like a nomination. But this is another slot. I'm gonna go with Gladiator 2. I think Gladiator 2, it's in a lot of the categories where it's not long listed, it's getting kind of beat out because there are so many different things you can choose from and different things that can get pushed and elevated above Gladiator 2. But when we're in these specific long listed categories, there's only so many other options, and so I think those are the spots where Gladiator 2 is going to be having the success. Plus, I mean, the sound design in the film is phenomenal. Next up is Best Score, and I have three locks in this category: The Brutalist, Conclave, Emilia Perez. Now, we're debating between the final remaining films here. There's Blitz, Challengers, Nosferatu, Wicked, The Wild Robot. Now, in the fourth spot, I'm gonna go with Challengers. I think the Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross score, it's got Globe, it's got Critics' Choice, it's been getting places. I think that's enough to put it in. And you're probably screaming, saying The Wild Robot absolutely needs to be in here because it has Globe, it has Critics' Choice, it has BAFTA, and I agree, it does need to be in here. I just can't shake the feeling of score being another one of those categories that oftentimes will snub animated films, or it'll snub whatever you feel like, what we feel like is a consensus one of the best scores, or a score that we all love. The score category just feels like it's one of those fluky things. So I'm really stupid for picking against it, but I am going against The Wild Robot, and I'm going to put Wicked in there in just a surprise nomination. This is another one. This is maybe one of my biggest, my bold predictions, the no guts, no glory predictions of picking a snub for The Wild Robot in Best Score. I fully expect I might chicken out of this by Oscar nomination morning, and again might switch, and again I'll let you know if I do that, because it's another one of those. The more I just stare at the Globe, the Critics' Choice, the BAFTA, like it has all of the precursors, like it has everything. I just can't shake that this has happened year after year at the Oscars for score, where they just don't put in something that's supposed to get in there, a la Spider Verse, or they don't even like long list or nominate something that should be like the Batman. Like they just seem to do stuff like this all the time, and so I'm kind of just predicting this for now. It is my biggest kind of big swing that I think I'm making, but we'll see if I kind of chicken out and reverse course on this one. Then we have Best Original Song. There are three locks in this category. You'll see down here both the Emilia Perez songs, El Mal and Mi Camino, are the two locks. The next lock is The Journey from the 6888. You might be wondering, what is the 6888 and why is that getting an Oscar nomination? Two words: Diane Warren. We're putting it in there. We're not questioning it. She gets in every single year. Sometimes for some good songs, sometimes for okay songs in, decent movies, sometimes for songs that are like in fake movies that aren't even like a real thing, and you have to like go digging and search for it, and then when it finally releases it really wasn't even a movie, but it's still, she gets these things nominated because Diane Warren gets in here every single year. So we're locking her in. It's a lock. Now we have two slots remaining. You see the long list here. There's only 14 because the song from Better Man was, after making the long list, then was later ruled ineligible because it featured, I think it was featured like like direct lyrics, or it took something from another previous Robbie Williams song, and so it got ruled ineligible. So of all of these that we're looking at, there are some great there's some great songs here. I'm gonna go with "Kiss the Sky" from The Wild Robot. I'm gonna put it in here. I snubbed it in the previous category. Also, I didn't mention it. Part of the reason I kind of snubbed The Wild Robot earlier is because I knew I had it here. I had it in animated, and if I put it in score, and then there's a sound, I think is the other one. There's a couple other categories where it's like in contention, and it's like if you start giving it too many else, and you're gonna get an animated film that has like 6 nominations, and so I was preemptively predicting a snub in a couple spots, specifically that score. But I do think "Kiss the Sky," I think the song gets in. And for the fifth slot, this maybe is a kind of a hope thing. If you saw, I had a video on my channel 6 months ago, maybe not quite 6 months ago, but it was my halfway Oscar video of just like what would get nominated if the Oscars were today, and I had both Compress Repress and Out of Oklahoma. Actually, no, I didn't have Out of Oklahoma. I had Ain't No Love in Oklahoma, so never mind. I didn't have that one. But I did have Compress Repress on that list, and so part of me is rooting for that just because I think it would be cool that I predicted a Best Original Song, halfway through the Oscar season, when that's a category that isn't even really there. So I'm kind of rooting for that. But the one I'm really rooting for, and what I'm ultimately going to put in this fifth slot, is Harper and Will Go West from Will and Harper. Documentary is the next category, and a spoiler, I'm not predicting it there, But I do love this documentary, and this song is like made me so emotional at the end of the documentary. It's a beautiful song from Kristen Wiig. It's like the definition of it's like the you know not not I guess Husavik is kind of in this realm of like the song that you just wouldn't have thought had. I'm sure when they made the film too, they didn't really weren't thinking like this is going to get us an Oscar nomination. But then all of a sudden, once you just kind of get it in there and it becomes gets on the list and it's people listen to it and they can vote on it. If they see the film, it's the same as the what was it called? It Never Went Away. Is that what it was called? The song last year. Um, from American Symphony, the documentary that got the song nominated. It's one of those that the song is so emotional when you watch the film and you get to that song in the credits, and it's like it just moves you and brings you to tears. I think that is the same this song is, and so I hope that people are watching the film and they're getting the full impact of this song when it hits you in the credits. But I think it's a lovely song, and I would love to see it get nominated. So I'm just kind of it's kind of the hope prediction, but that's what I'm putting in there. Now, these last four categories, we're going to go through them super quick because I'm just not familiar with the submissions. I haven't seen any of these yet. I'm excited to go give a shot into what is getting nominated at these, or what is going to get nominated, going and watching them and seeing them, because I do like watching the documentaries and the shorts. It's just I'm bad at kind of actually carving out the time to do the homework or do watch them in advance and actually be a little bit more informed. So a lot of these are just kind of, especially here in the documentary, I've got No Other Land, Sugarcane, Black Box Diaries, Daughters, and Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. So those are just kind of the five that I've heard the most about in this category. So kind of just went with them. And then the shorts categories, these three, I don't this year. I'm sure maybe I'll do this. I'll do this before I submit my final predictions. I'll actually kind of research them and go into them. I did no research on any of these 15. I kind of just picked based off of titles. So we'll see if I kind of stick with these or if I switch on them. There's going to be a year, hopefully maybe next year I'll do this. I want to actually put in the work before Oscar nominations, and actually, because I'm sure all of these that are on the shortlist, I'm sure a bunch of them are available online. You could probably find them places and actually watch a lot of these. So I want to do that in future years of actually kind of put in that work beforehand and so I can be informed when I'm making my predictions. But right now it's just kind of throwing them out there and just hoping that I get 3 out of 5 in these categories. So for best documentary short, I went with I Am Ready, Warden, The Only Girl in the Orchestra, Incident, Michaela's Voice, A Letter to the World, and A Swim Lesson. And then best animated short, I went with Wander to Wonder. That's the one I'm most confident about because that got in at BAFTA in their one of their short categories. So I think that hopefully that is enough of a kind of an indication that there is something there with this one. The other nominations I'm going for is A Bear Named Wojtek, In the Shadow of the Cypress, Maybe Elephants, and A Crab in the Pool. And the last category, Best Live Action Short, the 5 I'm going with is The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent, An Orange from Jaffa, Dovecote, The Masterpiece, and Paris 70. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully I'm able to get this edited and uploaded as soon as possible on Wednesday, before the nominations come out. Again, I'll let you know in the comments down below if I switch any of these predictions, if I do anything different, or I'm sure I'll also update you in my Oscar reaction video, the nomination reaction video. So yeah, just let me know down below in the comments what some of your like no guts, no glory, what your big bold predictions are. You predicting any crazy snubs? Are you predicting crazy surprises? Is someone going to get into a category that hasn't shown up at any precursors? Let me know just the big bold predictions you're making down below. And again, thank you so much for watching the video. If you'd like to like the video and subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Have a great day.